Hey guys, welcome to Showstoppers. In this episode, we're going to be talking to MK Getler, the head of marketing at Alyce, to talk about all the incredible shows that they are currently putting out and continue to put out to inspire and entertain and educate their audiences, as well as a lot of practical insights that you can start to apply to build your own original video series. Check it out. What's going on, MK? Good to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kareem. It's been a little while. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy over there in Dublin.
Likewise, likewise. So for people who may not know you from before, do you want to give us a quick intro as to your 9 to 5, and then we can definitely talk about 5 to 9 right after that.
Yes, of course. So my name is MK Getler, and I am the head of marketing here at Alyce.
Awesome. And yeah, tell me about your 5 to 9. I know I have a lot of questions about this, so we're gonna dive into that much deeper later on. But what's your 5 to 9 look like?
Yeah, so my 5 to 9, as you can see, actually over my shoulder here, I love music. I actually studied music originally when I went to college. I had this grandiose idea that I was going to end up on Broadway one day. But instead I just sing to my dog and to my partner. That said, I am also a dog parent. I love any chance that I can get on some sort of a board, whether it be a snowboard, a surfboard, or a skateboard. I'm all for it. So here at the time of this recording, we're almost on the verge of snow season. So I cannot wait to get up to a mountain and just enjoy some nice freshies.
And little do people know, but one thing that you guys also think about, 5 to 9 is your notion for creating shows, which is exactly why we are so happy to have you on Showstoppers today. One thing, and the reason why I say that, even though it's definitely something that you guys do for the company, obviously 9 to 5. The vibe that I get from watching not just one of your shows, but like the 3 shows, actually the 4 shows that you guys have, is this feeling of it's the kind of thing that you'd watch after work anyway. It's the kind of thing you'd watch to get entertained, and also learn a lot of insights. So, I'd love for, especially if people haven't heard of the shows that you guys are putting out as Alyce. I want to dive into a lot of these shows today, but just to get an overview, can you give us a little bit more info as to the shows that you guys are currently running at the moment?
Yeah, so actually this week we're launching a new show called Office Hours. Office Hours is an extension of our learning environment called YOUniversity, YOU. And the reason I start with this is because YOUniversity, YOU, is all about what we stand for here at Alyce. Earlier this year, we launched a new category called Personal Experience, or PX. And PX is all about turning every single interaction you have with your prospects into one-to-one moments. Marketers today are spending a lot of time thinking about, how can I get as much maximum impact, maximum velocity, maximum reach as possible? But to what avail? Right now, what we're looking for in terms of marketing is to try to differentiate ourselves by being as personal, as relatable, as respectful, as relevant as possible. And marketers have a really big responsibility right now about creating content that helps people grow, whether that be growth from their business perspective or even leadership perspective, or personal growth and career development perspective. And you do that by creating these one-to-one moments in your marketing interactions. So Office Hours, as an extension of YOUniversity, which is a more formal training environment where you can learn all about PX, is kind of the off-brand version, the between class, a little bit of the informal learning. I don't know about you. School for me was just not part of my school. I'll just put it blank. I sucked at school. I was terrible at school. Learning was not my jam. But everything I did learn to get myself into this position as the head of marketing here at Alyce is because I learned it from folks who were experts in their domain I also had a lot more learning on the job and on the fly than I ever did in a formal classroom setting. So I launched the series Office Hours this week to teach people those little competitive differentiators that you can quickly absorb, digestible series in like 15, 20-minute spots where you take something, you run with it, and you just apply that into your daily life that are going to make huge impact. Not that these like training sessions won't have big impact for you, but these small little nuggets are going to make really big impact on what you're doing. So that's Office Hours. We also launched another series about 2 weeks ago called Data Protection Breakfast Club. And at Alyce, you know that we love a theme. We can never help ourselves when it comes to a theme. And so our counsel here at Alyce, Andy Dale, who is super, super passionate about data protection and data privacy, wanted to launch a series with some of his peers in the space of general counsels at companies, like Nike, like Twitter, like Salesforce, like Shopify, like massive companies who are really trying to lead the forefront of data protection and data privacy for the modern consumer. So in his series, the reason it went to Breakfast Club is because in the 80s, the modern day data protection and privacy legislation here in the US passed. And as a nod to the 80s and the introduction of data protection and data privacy, he has created this series in partnership with Pedro Pavon. And the two of them are they're blowing up right now with this really cool series that's super interesting. And it's approachable for everyone. You don't have to be a general counsel. You don't have to be a privacy specialist at a giant Fortune 500 company. You can just be a normal average day person and just be more informed, especially from the marketing community side.
And one of the things that I absolutely loved about the Data Protection Breakfast Club and Office Hours that you were telling us about first is just your passion for branding the shows like genuinely as like proper like television like series. I love the intro to the Data Protection Breakfast Club because it's just so retro and it like takes you back. It's got this like whole Back to the Future vibe. Obviously with Office Hours, I was getting like some serious like I don't know why, but like I got like some serious like Avril Lavigne kind of like vibes as well. And I was wondering like you guys obviously put thought into that, and I guess for these two shows and also for like the others that you'll probably get into, Let's Get Phygital and the YOUniversity like speaker series in general. How do you guys make the decision to like do a show that may or may not be directly related to the business? Like, I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say, but I'd love to hear from you about that a little bit.
Yeah, so if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is, at face value, Data Protection Breakfast Club, Office Hours, Let's Get Phygital, these aren't going to have one-to-one impacts on our revenue generation goals. Am I understanding that correctly? Like what you're like, these feel tangential, not directly related to revenue generation.
Right. It feels tangential because it's so focused on the value for the audience, which I just love for you to speak to us around that a little bit.
Yeah, so our philosophy at Alyce has a lot to do with this concept of delivering a personal experience. But underneath personal experience, you have to have a desire to create a educational dimension to how you are interacting and engaging with the audiences you want to do business with. So our series, while at face value may not be one-to-one directly correlated to revenue generation, we know that our audience is still maturing around these concepts of PX and what it means and the implications of PX in their business. So if you deconstruct Office Hours, we're getting a little bit more prescriptive for marketers, for sellers who are trying to turn as many of these one-to-many moments into one-to-one moments. And we know that transformation is not going to happen overnight. And so the more that we can give people small, quick wins to pave that path towards delivering as many one-to-one experiences as possible, we consider that a win, not only for PX, but also for Alyce. Because if you don't understand how to deliver and the importance and significance of delivering a personal experience, you're going to have a bad time with our product. Our product is designed for you to build bonds and build authentic relationships with the folks that you want to do business with. Now, when you look at Data Protection Breakfast Club, what we're trying to do with that series is say there is a fine line between using personal experience and the personal information or personal data about the folks you want to do business with, that you can deliver a world-class experience, or you could completely botch that first interaction or continued interactions that you have with the folks you want to do business with. So you have to have these equal balances between using personal experience to create that authenticity in the relationships you're forging, but you also need to know the dangers of using that data to, either enhance that experience or actually detract from that experience. So these two series are, go ahead. I was going to say these two series are highly educational, but they're educational in the sense that they're counterbalancing each other. And so we had to be really thoughtful and intentional with how we were architecting both series.
So I suppose, like, based on that, how do you, and like what you're saying, like, resonates with me so much, just because, right, like marketing, we come from a place where, it's all about like, explaining to higher ups, like, what the direct value is to, or the ROI rather from the content that we create. And it ends up being very much, to use a HubSpot term, like we were both in HubSpot, very much like, bottom of the funnel or decision stage kind of, like approach, but it's also like the most obvious thing to do. It's the most saturated thing, right? Like PPC, like there's just so much attention on that space. And I love how you guys recognize that PX or, personal experiences and helping, businesses make that shift from one to many to what they're realizing is a lot more sort of fruitful and worth their time, which is really one-to-one. You guys are recognizing that there is a level of education, an educational layer that has to go towards that, and that helps them get their head around the overall notion of PX, and of course, helps build that audience and build that trust and understanding with Alyce, and how Alyce can help them in that regard. So I totally get that. And I wonder what was your thought process to actually plan these shows? Like, how do you guys come up with such cool concepts for like the names, right? Like the intros. Do you guys start with like a super long list and like narrow it down? Or like, I'd love to know what the creative process behind coming up with these ideas.
Yeah, it's funny that you ask about our creative process, because we've talked a lot about actually having our creative process be a live, open meeting that people can attend, because we get these accolades a lot, that our team is just so creative, so innovative, so differentiated in the way that we are putting the content out there. It's so thoughtful. There's so much interconnectivity. Part of that is in large part, honestly, is because of the way I structure my team's meetings to build and foster a level of creativity, and compartmentalize, honestly, the types of activities that we're going to tackle as a team. So I'll give you a quick rundown of what our team meeting structure looks like. Every month we have a series of 4 meetings. At the top of the month, we always do a last month historical. It's a very data-centric, very metrics-heavy meeting, and we use that meeting to orient ourselves on our performance of, last month or last quarter. Again, very, very focused on data and the performance of the team. And then every other week, to counterbalance that, we have these meetings that are hour-long called Inspo Sesh. It's actually called Inspo Sesh on the calendar invite.
I love it.
And Inspo Sesh is a very informal meeting. The only rule that we have for Inspo Sesh is nobody can say no. It's a classic improv technique, classic.
Nice.
That in improv, you're supposed to say yes and, because if someone were to say no in a scene, it would be super awkward for the attendees, for the audience members.
Sure.
And so that stagnation of creativity, that dead end, oftentimes leads to and breeds insecurities in the way that folks actually want to bring contributions to the table. So with Inspo Sesh, we meet like I said, twice a month for an hour. And each department or each group will bring in something they want to problem solve with the group together. So for these data series, data protection breakfast club, we knew that Andy Dale, our counsel here at Alyce, wanted to create a new series about data protection, data privacy. And he didn't really know where to go with it. And if he were to just create a generic data series, like, we would lose viewership, we would lose audience engagement, and we would also lose our edge out there in the space, our competitive differentiator. And so we took a step back and we started just thinking more about, like, how could we help Andy bring this series to life? And at Alyce, we love a good theme. So we figured, this theme of this 80s data protection coming around, legislation passing, like, there's something there that we can do and use that as a thread of continuity. So the first port of call was to say, like, what are all the sources of inspiration we can pull from the 80s? And we just wrote an abstract. So I sat down and I just wrote an abstract about the 80s. I started looking at episodes and how we could turn this concept of data protection, data privacy, and legislation, GDPR, how could we turn that into something that's tangentially related to the 80s? And it just clicked for me that every 80s movies has like a core takeaway, has some sort of a theme. And that if we could figure out how to pair the theme of those 80s movies into the theme of one dimension or facet of data protection, we could use that as a runner for the entire series. So once I wrote those abstracts, once I started showing the interconnectivity of every episode for those themes, I just asked the team, like, how could we visually represent this in an engaging way, in a way that's still on brand to Alyce? It's always something that we always struggle to balance. It's a good tension for us, actually, to push ourselves to have our aesthetic of our series have a connectivity into our core brand, and then use that as our focal point for creating these series. And then once you develop and you do all that foresight, you do all that forethought, everything after that becomes so much easier. You develop your processes, you develop your adherences to scale. So the same thing happened for office hours. Honestly, we had launched our new learning environment, YOUniversity, earlier this September. And in that, again, counterculture, like you mentioned Avril Lavigne, I may or may not have gone as Avril Lavigne for multiple Halloweens in the early 2000s.
Nice. Multiple Halloweens.
So that, well, exactly. Not present day Halloween, although, we're only a couple days away from Halloween at this point, at the time of this recording. Anyway, I promise I won't be dressing as Avril Lavigne this year.
Oh, man. Okay.
But that series, it was near and dear to my heart because formal classroom learning, it's great, it's wonderful, it's not for everyone though, right? So
100%.
For me,
yeah,
this series was all about, like, what can I build for people who don't learn in a traditional formal learning format and setting?
So sick.
So office hours became my little baby, my little project, and I just start pulling in folks like, I love what you're doing here. Can I talk to you for 15 minutes about that? Like, I love what you're doing here in sales and like how you're refining the field. Will you come and chat with me more about that? I love what you're doing in CS.
Yeah, and just on that, MK, like, I was actually binge watching a bunch of episodes from office hours. I was also checking out most recently. I was checking out the episode. I think it was the first one with Morgan Ingram, and that was an awesome episode. I still have to get through the rest of it, but like, I just love the what you said, just because, like, I was one of those guys, you know what I mean? Like, I don't learn, like, I'm like me personally, like, I'm like a vegetable in a classroom setting, right? Like, I don't understand, it just doesn't work on me for some reason. I have to, like, go back and, like, try and do, like, my own learning, and many times it's in the form of, like, okay, like, try and grab some time with my professor, and try and get an alternate. And in my case, it was a lot more of an effective, like, a more effective route towards learning. So I absolutely love that, and you do such a great job of explaining that as well at the beginning of the show, so that people understand the connection there. So yeah, I thought that was awesome. And just to go back to something important that you said, MK, around starting with that, like, with that forethought or that initial concept for Data Protection Breakfast Club, I love how like once you guys settled on the that 80s theme, it almost opened up like a treasure box of ideas and stuff. And exactly to your point, like it's definitely something that I've learned as well, that like once you have like a source of inspiration or like a muse, if you will, it actually does get so much easier to come up with ideas, because you're almost like borrowing references, you're borrowing things from others that have come before you, other episodes, as you mentioned. And I wonder, was that the same for Office Hours as well?
That's a good question. So office hours, and much to the chagrin of my team, it was very much just something that I had in my head. And so my team was spending a lot of time trying to figure out, like, pull strands of like creative energy from this like very specific thing that I had in my head. And so for office hours, once I framed up for the team, even just like a visual reference, once I framed up to the team that it's tangentially, it's adjacent to university. So there are tenets of school that you can weave into the creative for this. But the thing is that it's more like, actually the word that got everybody really excited was graffiti. And I was like, but it's like the graffiti. It's like the paper airplanes. It's like the spitballs side of school, where the person in the back of the classroom, they're the disruptor. But it's not because they like hate school. It's just that like school wasn't designed for them, and that they needed a different alternative means for learning information. And as soon as I said graffiti and paper airplanes and spitballs, like it stuck with the team. They understood what I was trying to create with that experience.
Right, like bubble gum at the under the desk and all that. Yeah, I got you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that helped the team understand where I was trying to take the series and create these little morsels of learning that kept people engaged, was still fun and entertaining, but still had that like link to school and the theme of school.
Love that so much. Yeah, 100%. For some reason, you're reminding me of School of Rock for some reason right now, where it's like School of Rock, like AC/DC, like there's so many different like positive associations that come with that. But yeah, I suppose like we can probably, I have so many questions on this, but in the interest of time, I do want to move on to something else that you guys do really, really well that really caught my eye, which is, and I'm going to take you back to Let's Get Phygital for this one. One of my favorite episodes, MK, is the one you did with none other than your dad, Al Getler, who, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who is a very successful business person, but he's also a ventriloquist and a puppet master as such. And I love how, first of all, like the dynamic between you guys was super awesome, but I also loved how easy, I'm talking from a production standpoint, it was very easy, very relatable to watch that episode, to just enjoy the content, as opposed to doing something that's so impossibly like perfect and polished that I can't even relate to it anymore. For example, like, right, there were some parts obviously where there was like, and I think this is a constant across like some of the other episodes you guys do, but when you invite guests to like share screen and talk, like, take us into their world, how do you guys think about like production overall? How do you maintain a certain level, but also make sure that it's not like impossible to like replicate and scale, if I'm making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So the series that you're talking about was actually our annual event, which might end up being digital and also physical here in the future. So that physical and digital hybrid is what we're trying to do with the events that we curate. For our annual event, YOUniverse, YOU, very similar to university.
Yeah.
YOUniverse is where we...
Yeah. No, I made a mistake. You're right. Yeah.
Totally fine. So, YOUniverse, YOU, is all about putting the person ahead of the persona. And one way we here at Alyce help to differentiate the person and the persona is by celebrating and living and breathing in the 5 to 9. So we started this episode by introducing, yes, my 9 to 5, what I do, by day, but by night, there are so many different dimensions and facets of that compose my identity. So for you to just label me as like, oh, head of marketing would just like be a complete disservice to me as a person and all the different individual components that comprise me. And so for YOUniverse, to help people understand how valuable and important the 5 to 9 and the 9 to 5 are, and how much they're blended together, especially now in a COVID era where we are living and like working all in the same physical space. We have our first day of YOUniverse is the 5 to 9 Fest, where we have activities and funtivities and interesting like different types of 5 to 9 events that people can come to. It's rolling admission, come and go as you please. We have little kid-centric things as well too. So if you have your kids, set them down and have them work and interact with us as well too. But for the session that you're talking about specifically, this session, was with my dad. I'm very privileged that I come from an entertainer first family, but the apple doesn't fall far from the tree because my dad also works in marketing and sales as well too.
Yep.
And so in this particular series, one thing that I will caution people to do is to make sure that you select the folks that you want to interact with very carefully. You want to make sure that you have, there's probably a better word for it, but like a technical peer. You want to make sure that the people that you're putting into these environments, if they are going to share their screen, you either prep them well in advance to make sure that they know how to click share screen, or they understand the way to toggle or to speak directly to a camera or speak into a microphone. The other thing that you want to be conscientious of as well too is that some people will already have these innate skills baked into their skill sets. So that's also important too when you're selecting the guests that you want to have on your show. So I had an inside tip. I knew that my dad was very technically savvy. He also runs his own series on Facebook Live, where he interviews folks that are actually in the ventriloquism industry. So I knew that he was already well-versed in all things presenting, all things digital facilitation. He knows how to engage an audience digitally as well. So it was kind of a shoo-in. It's part of the reason why he helped us kick off that whole series, because we knew that that first interaction for everybody was going to be so big, and we needed to have a showstopper come in who knew what they were doing.
Yeah, 100%. And and I mean, in terms of the way that it was produced, I mean, because I'll tell you from like my perspective, where we're seeing a lot of folks, and I'm asking you for feedback or advice on this point, but sometimes we see a lot of folks who are like, you know what, we're actually not gonna get started with the show, even though we do have an idea and we've planned it out, because we're just waiting until, right, like we do everything, like let's say face to face, or we're waiting until we get like a professional production team to come in and do it, for us as such. What I loved with the ease with which, if I can call it that, the ease of which you guys do things, and the chilled outness of it is that it's like, hey, like we recognize, at least for me, from an audience member's perspective, I just feel like, you guys always put the focus on the content and the conversations that are taking place as such. Did it ever like stop you guys, as Alyce, to be like, oh, let's actually wait till we get, you know what I mean, like a full on production kind of like crew, or really like do something different before we go ahead with the show? How do you guys think about that?
It's a good question. At least since I've been at Alyce, we haven't been hesitant to just like jump in with 2 feet and just go. Part of that is like my DNA. I'd much rather figure it out on the fly and build something really cool than sit and wait and over engineer and over tinker something. What I'll also say is that the barrier to entry to high quality content is actually really, really low. I can share the report, but I can share the insights for you that most people actually don't care about the video quality. Audio quality for sure, 100%. But what most people care about is what they walk away from after having invested the time and energy into your content. Now, like, I'm going to zoom out, like really big picture, but the last time I learned something, I went onto YouTube and I watched someone who's like from the South here in the US. Like they taught me how to like make this like specific knot that I can use on my fishing lure. And Like, I went to YouTube, video quality was like, meh. The like audio quality was like good enough. But really what I was there for was their knowledge, their subject matter expertise. And once we realized that people are going to the depths of YouTube to find the subject matter experts who may not have the best quality of audio, may not have the best quality of video, those are the people that are making a big difference in teaching and evolving this space and helping to share and disseminate their knowledge. So once you understand that the modern consumer does not care really about high quality, the highest of quality or the highest of quantity, they really care about what you're doing in terms of the quality of the content that you're producing. So the barrier to entry is super, super low. It's also so much more accessible for folks to create really high quality content using free resources like Zoom. Even on this call, I'm just like, we all have 4K recording devices in our mobile devices. So like, we're recording this on a mobile device. Yes, I have a nice microphone here. It's picking up audio, but that's because I do so many of these engagements. That was the right investment for me. People can still use like headphones, AirPods. You can still use over-ear headphones as well too. And the audio quality is still there. The key though is the content. It's what you're saying and it's how you're packaging all of these things that get people hooked in that first second and keep the eyes on the content that you're developing.
I love that. I'm literally taking notes on this because I absolutely understand what you mean, because ultimately like especially right, because everyone's working remotely these days. I feel like more than ever the playing field has become more like level more than ever before. Like whether we admit it or not, but like pre-COVID, right? Like everyone used to think, oh yeah, if you get the opportunity, record something like face to face. For a variety of reasons, like that's just, more desirable, better. But right now, just because everything is a lot more virtual, it's kind of like adjusted people's expectations to where, to your point, they are genuinely focused on the most important thing from that subject matter expert or from that source of insight, entertainment, engagement, so on and so forth. So I guess on the back of that, MK, once you guys put out episodes, whether it's with the YOUniverse speaker series or any of the other shows we talked about, how do you get, like, what steps do you guys take to make sure that people actually see the content in terms of like distribution and things like that?
Yeah, the second most important thing, if not on par with the most important thing behind an episode, first being like, you got to have like a good idea. You have to pick a good theme. You have to have thought of every single aspect of the content first and foremost, is the distribution plan. Our team right now is also always continuously refining our distribution motion. And we think about this as a two-pronged approach. The first prong is obviously because you put so much forethought into this series, that series has some sort of interconnectivity between another dimension of your business. So it fits in really nicely, and you can use your employees as a marketing engine as well to promote, evangelize, hype up the content that you're distributing. The second thing, though, is to hype up your influencer network. So for YOUniverse, for example, we're famous at Alyce for these LinkedIn takeovers. We did a massive LinkedIn takeover for everybody who was in our network, everybody who was attending as a speaker in our series, everybody who was somehow connected to us. They could be like our dog walker. It was just like, time to pass by our house. We got everybody possible to go on LinkedIn and take it over with their 5 to 9 and boost up that hashtag. It was a registration play for us to drive attendance to the event, but it was also just to catch some eyes because nobody knew who Alyce was prior to us, like really coming out there that aggressively.
And just because that's super interesting, MK. Like, can you break that down for us? Like, what did that LinkedIn takeover look like from your perspective?
Yeah, so from our perspective, we had to take a step back and understand our ecosystem of influencers. The first step of that influencer network, obviously, is the employees of Alyce. They are the foundation. Work smarter, not harder is my personal life motto. So why would I only have a marketing team in this like nucleus of 9 people actually be the only ones to market the business? Our sales team, our customer success teams, they should all be out there figuring out their own voice, their own point of view on marketing, and what better way to do that than through activation on this 5 to 9 event. The second tier is everybody who's already in our network. So those are the people who have already been selected as a speaker inside of that series. But we also very sneakily have a very active community of customers who are super, super bought into what we're doing. So our customers, we've curated them as well too. There's like another sneaky play I have in the background. One day I'll present my like surround sound strategy and how I actually develop our demand gen engine. But the customers that we have evangelized through our Alyce All-Star program are just customers that we celebrate, that we love. They just get PX at the core of who they are as people. When we celebrate them and we have, certain asks, because we've developed such a great relationship, the ask isn't that big of a deal. It's not that big of a lift. They say, of course, we'll help Alyce promote, what you're doing there. So we have our speakers and we also have our customers who are super happy in evangelizing our brand with or without us in the room. But in this case, we happen to be in the room and helping to tell them what to say.
Love it. And in terms of
the third,
go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. The third tier of folks, honestly, are just like friends within our network. So whether they be brands that we really love, we love what they're doing, and we kind of like, we have this like banter or interaction with them out there on social media, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. That group, once they saw what we were doing with tiers 2 and 1, they said, well, we want to get on the fun of this. And they actually just organically picked up on the trend and just starting to generate interest around this 5 to 9 hashtag. So the tiers then ended up actually having this like feedback loop and this flywheel effect of other people just like naturally, organically sharing their 5 to 9s.
Yeah, and I think I love it because for each person that gets involved, right? Like the whole like hashtag like 5 to 9 looks totally different for them, and for every right like n+1 person that joins, they're adding their own unique take on it, which then again I see the flywheel effect for sure, because it resonates with different people, so on and so. For example, you're a musician, like you traveled to Spain, you've done a lot of cool things as a musician. That resonates with me because I'd be a musician as well. So like someone else may see that you're like an avid like snowboarder. And that may resonate with them, so on and so forth, and just the combinations and permutations of that once you start adding more people is scalable, but at the same time super like relatable, which I absolutely love. And in terms of the full episodes, like do you guys find ways to use these episodes in other ways to create more content out of them, or like any like repurposing as such?
Yes. So there's 2 things. One thing I want to comment on is what you were saying about that 5 to 9 hashtag. This isn't just like a hashtag that we like think is like a huge lever to our growth strategy. Like this is something that we actually really believe in, because when you go back and you look at what people posted on LinkedIn with their 5 to 9 hashtag, it wasn't really the post that you should be paying attention to. It's what happened in the comments. That is where the magic happened for us, because when people realized that the 5 to 9 was about creating connectivity and communities and inclusivity in our like personal lives, that's when the fun started happening and people really started creating these like relationships with each other. Like little matchmakers out there on LinkedIn. So that was the magic of that too. So I would encourage anybody who is considering some sort of a takeover like that, it's not necessarily only about what you're trying to say in the post. It's how you're generating the engagement also within the comments as well too, and the contacts that you're trying to activate in there. But your question, which is a little bit different than the tangent that I went on as well.
No, that's super helpful for sure.
Can you refresh my memory on the question? Sorry.
So in terms of the See, I forgot now because I'm just so focused on what you just said because that's absolute gold.
Sorry. It was such a good question too.
Okay, I think we were talking about, and it's so funny for anyone watching this, you can probably just rewind and figure out exactly what we were trying to,
I'd be like,
what
you
we were trying to
idiots,
say.
go back.
But I think it was just around like, oh my God, I'm blanking out right now. I'm trying to use filler words and it's not even working, MK. But I'm
It's
sure,
okay.
I'm sure we'll get back to it. Oh yeah, no, I remember now. Yeah, how do you guys like how do you guys like disseminate your content? Like think of it in like a modular sense
Yes.
and repurpose it as such, if at all.
Yes. Yep. So once you have figured out the series, the theme, once you've figured out your distro strategy, the content repurposing strategy is this is the secret weapon that many companies don't understand about. So when I go like back in my time machine, I go back to when I started leading the Alyce team. The first muscle group that I made sure my team had developed was our content repurposing skill sets.
Nice.
And our content repurposing strategy. While we were defining these series and building these series, we needed some additional air coverage on our channels to, get out there, start commenting, building our community, building the activation. And we had published, before I had joined the team, we'd actually published a lot of content that didn't get to see too much of the light of day. And so I asked the team, okay, great. So we have all this really good, high quality content. And more eyes need to be on it. So let's figure out what our content repurposing strategy is going to be. How are we going to turn this static long form content into visuals, into videos, into just small little sound bites, into reshareable content as well too for our community. And once we developed 5 or 6 different ways and permutations of one asset, then we started distributing that out to our channels. So by the time that it came for us to start these series, create these series, launch these series, we'd already had a really well-defined content repurposing muscle group in our team so that we could turn one asset into months worth of content for us. In fact, just last week, maybe even on our editorial calendar for this week, you'll see there's still content from YOUniversity, which was way back in the spring, way back in March, April. So all this to say, if you don't have that repurposing muscle group on lock, I would invest the time and energy to develop that strategy early on so that you are doing justice, you are doing service to a high quality content that you're producing in your original series.
I love it. And it makes sense because like, as you said, like there's so much content that doesn't necessarily see the light of day or doesn't get the attention that it deserves. And this is a great, and we do it like with a lot of other like facets of our life, whether it comes to like food or like anything else. The same definitely goes for marketing. So MK, we'd love to have you on for much longer than this, but I'm super conscious of your time. I guess in closing, can you tell us a little bit about who would be your idea if someone's watching this right now and they're thinking about one of your shows to tune into? Can you just give us a quick kind of like rundown as to like the different shows that you guys have in terms of like which audience would be perfect for each? I feel like I'm losing my English today, but hopefully you got what I'm trying to say.
There's another language that you want to try on me, then we can try that too.
Let me try and drop.
So okay, so like the TLDR is office hours. Is for any marketers, especially account-based marketers, demand gen marketers, or field and event marketers who want to create a one-to-one experience for their prospects at the top of the funnel. Office hours is also great for sales reps, specifically business development reps and sales leaders who are looking to either change their personal repeatable routine or their team's repeatable routine to deliver more one-to-one interactions with the prospects they want to close one and do business with. That's office hours. For data protection, data protection breakfast club, This series is designed for folks who are responsible for data privacy and data protection at your organization. That could be, your counsel, that could be your chief security officer, that could be actually a marketer, a marketing ops person who is responsible for the hygiene and cleanliness of data. Could be also a sales ops person too, who is also very conscientious and responsible for GDPR compliance, for CCPA compliance. Anybody who has some sort of connectivity into compliance around data privacy and data protection, this series is for you. I promise it's also really entertaining. So it is still really exciting and entertaining, even if you don't have that direct one-to-one connection to, protection and data privacy.
I love it. Perfect. And where can people find these shows?
So you can go to alyce.com/office hours. For office hours, you can go to alyce.com/data protection breakfast club, or you can just go to alyce.com and navigate to the resources section of our site, where you'll see all of our YOUniversity original series.
Fantastic. MK, thank you so much for joining us today and telling us all the cool things that you and your team are working on. And we'll be catching you soon for sure.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. I always love when our paths get to cross, Kareem.
100%. All right. See you guys in the next episode.
Bye.